Weddings used to make me feel hopeful. That was before I knew what it felt like to watch one unravel your own life in real time. It was a cool Saturday in late September, early foliage season in Vermont. The kind of day that looks like a postcard. Crisp air, golden leaves, and champagne flutes catching the afternoon sun. My younger brother, Carter, was getting married on a rented estate with wide lawns and a barn converted into a dance hall. It was the kind of wedding that made people whisper the word perfect. But perfection is a funny thing. From a distance, everything looked ideal. Up close, it was more like a stage play, and I was watching it from behind the curtain. I remember standing near the bar, fingers wrapped around a sweating glass of ginger ale I never asked for. I wasn't drinking. My stomach wouldn't let me. I was watching the dance floor, not even pretending to mingle. Somewhere in the crowd, someone had started playing Sinatra. The band shifted smoothly from "Fly Me to the Moon" to "The Way You Look Tonight," and I felt it before I saw it. A subtle, sharp shift in the air. That's when I spotted her. Brianna, my wife. The woman I'd married 7 years ago in a simple courthouse ceremony with coffee-stained paperwork and a kiss that promised forever. She was wearing a pale blue dress that hugged her in a way I hadn't seen in months. Hair down, makeup perfect, laughing, and dancing. With him, Shane. I knew the name before I saw the face. She'd mentioned him enough times that it didn't even feel like a surprise. Shane from work, Shane from the seminars. Shane who's really brilliant with logistics. But I'd never seen his face until that moment. He was taller than I expected. Clean-cut, dressed like he'd read every GQ spread from the last decade. Tan from something that didn't look like an office job. The kind of man who used confidence as a P*N and politeness as a shield. Their bodies were too close. Her hand brushed the back of his shoulder, fingers grazing in a way that made my stomach knot. She laughed. Not just a laugh, but the laugh. The one she used to save for me when we were on road trips and she was a couple drinks in, making fun of old love songs on the radio. Her face was tilted up toward his like she was absorbing warmth. I couldn't move at first. I just stood there, listening to the clink of glasses and the rhythm of feet tapping polished wood floors. Then I walked. No destination, just movement. My legs took me toward the cake table, half buried in white roses and pastel frosting. I slipped my wedding band off my finger. Slowly, deliberately. No theatrics. No announcement. Just the truth, placed quietly between a stack of dessert plates and a silver cake knife. When I looked up, I saw her see me. Her head turned toward me with that half-second delay people have when they know they've been caught. Her eyes locked with mine. And then she was walking quick, sharp steps in heels she'd claimed were too uncomfortable to dance in earlier. "Joel," she said, voice pitched low and urgent, like I was the one making a scene. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She looked down at the ring on the table. Her expression didn't falter. Not visibly. But I saw it. The split-second freeze, the micro-expression of panic she buried almost as quickly as it appeared. And then came the pivot. "You're misunderstanding this," she said, soft and measured. "Shane's my coworker. You've heard me talk about him. We organized the same leadership tracks. We've danced at conferences before. It's nothing." She stepped in closer, lowering her voice just enough to draw attention while pretending not to. "I know how this looks," she said with a practiced smile. "But you're reading too much into it." My silence must have made her nervous because she changed tactics. "We were just dancing," she said, turning slightly toward the small group of bridesmaids watching from the nearby drink station. "Joel's just tired. He's been doing too much lately." Then she laughed, and I realized I'd just been repositioned. She'd taken the focus off herself and spun the camera lens my way. Within seconds, the story shifted. No longer a wife dancing too close with a work friend. Now it was a husband unraveling. The overworked, overtired guy with a little too much emotion for a public setting. One of the guests, someone from her side of the family, even patted my arm like I was a child caught sulking. I wanted to say something. I really did. But I knew how it would sound in that moment. A public fight at a family wedding? I'd be the villain. And Brianna? She'd be the misunderstood professional with a husband who couldn't handle her success. So I turned around and walked out of the barn. The air outside was cooler than I remembered. The string lights twinkled above the lawn, couples holding hands as they wandered past the garden and out to the field. It was peaceful, picturesque. I walked past the vintage photo booth trailer and the fire pit, where a group of teenagers toasted marshmallows, oblivious. My phone buzzed. "Brianna, Joel, don't leave like this. You're blowing it out of proportion. Come back, please." I didn't respond. Instead, I kept walking until I reached the edge of the field, where the music faded into a hum and the night sky looked way too calm for what I was feeling inside. I stood there for a long time, not thinking, just existing, trying to process how everything had shifted in the span of a jazz solo. How her face, the one I used to trust blindly, had turned into something unreadable. Because it wasn't just what I saw. It was how fast she reacted, how prepared she was to rewrite the scene, flip the narrative, and do it with the kind of confidence that only comes from practice, from experience. And that's what scared me most. Not the laugh, not the hand on his shoulder, not the closeness, but the performance. Because if that wasn't her first time walking the edge of a lie, then I had no idea how long she'd been dancing through one. After the wedding, something inside me shifted. Not loud or sudden, but quiet and irreversible. Like a door closing softly behind you that you didn't even know was open. For the first few days, I tried to push it down. Tell myself I'd overreacted. That maybe Brianna really was just being social. Maybe it was all innocent. But that lie didn't hold for long, because the truth had already started scratching at the walls. I couldn't unsee what I saw. And more than that, I couldn't forget how easily she handled it. Her ability to twist the moment, to control the narrative like she'd rehearsed it. That stayed with me. So I did what people do when they're not ready to confront the truth head-on. I started observing. Quietly, closely, and things began to line up in ways they hadn't before. It started with her hours. Brianna had always worked hard, that much was true. But over the last year, her schedule had changed in subtle ways. Later nights, earlier mornings, weekend strategy sessions with her team that never showed up on any shared calendar. First, I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to. She talked about growth, expansion, investor meetings. Said the gym was finally getting traction and she had to be there to guide the business. It made sense. I didn't push back. But looking back now, the signs weren't just there. They were screaming. She started wearing perfume again. Not the stuff I liked. Something different. Stronger. Something she used to say gave her a headache. And makeup, not the casual touch-up kind. Full face, even on Saturdays when she was just running errands. Her phone, which used to sit untouched on the counter while we cooked or watched movies, was now glued to her hand. Always face down, notifications silenced. If I entered a room unexpectedly, she'd switch screens like she was hiding classified intel. Once, she walked outside in the middle of a call, barefoot in the rain just to take it privately. Then there was the text. One night, as she was cooking dinner, her phone buzzed. It lit up just long enough for me to see a name. Mason W. I'd never heard of a Mason, and I didn't recognize the area code either. She glanced at the screen, smiled, and locked it without opening the message. I asked who Mason was. She didn't miss a beat. Investor lead, she said, flipping the chicken like I hadn't just caught her in a bad lie. He's based out of Boston. Don't get excited. Probably another guy who wants a piece of the gym without lifting a finger. I nodded, pretending to buy it. But something about the way she said it, too fast, too casual, made me pull my laptop out that night and do a little digging. The number wasn't tied to anyone named Mason, but it was tied to an unlisted Google Voice account. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I started noticing inconsistencies. A movie stub in the trash, one I never heard about. She claimed she'd spent the evening meal prepping at the gym, but the receipt said otherwise. 8:15 p.m. A romantic drama she'd once joked she hated. I found it in her coat pocket when I was grabbing my charger. Then there was the email. A confirmation for a dinner reservation, 2 guests, Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. A little Italian place downtown. I only saw it because she'd left her inbox open while I passed by with laundry. The reservation was under Shane's name. When I asked how her night had gone, she said she'd grabbed sushi with a bunch of the girls from her 6 p.m. boot camp. The confidence in her voice was unsettling. I didn't push. I just nodded. Said, "That sounds nice." I told myself I needed more. Something solid. Because accusing someone you love of betrayal, that isn't a casual conversation. That's a fracture you don't come back from. But love doesn't make you blind. It makes you complicit. And for a while I was exactly that. The more I looked, the more I realized just how much I'd missed or ignored. She used to call me from the road when she traveled. Then she stopped. No more check-ins. Just vague updates. Landed late. Conference going long. Wi-Fi spotty. I believed every word. But now I wondered who she was texting from those hotel rooms. Who she was laughing with while I was sitting at home convincing myself she was just ambitious. One morning, I went out back to water the tomato plants. A routine I'd picked up during lockdown when I needed something small and alive to take care of. I noticed the security camera above the garage was blinking red. Disconnected. I climbed up to check. The wire had been cut clean. Not frayed. Not chewed. Clean. When I asked her about it, she shrugged. Probably a tech thing. The storm last week messed with everything. There hadn't been a storm. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't about drifting apart. This wasn't a slow fade. This was a second life being built behind a curtain I hadn't thought to open. Even the gym, our business, our dream, started to feel unfamiliar. She'd taken over most of the operations under the guise of efficiency. And I'd let her. Trusted her. But I began to wonder what else she had taken over while I wasn't looking. I'd become a bystander in my own marriage, watching it disassemble piece by piece while she smiled at me across the dinner table like nothing was wrong. And then came the final straw, a conversation I wasn't supposed to overhear. It was late, maybe after midnight. I'd gone downstairs to grab water. Her office door was cracked. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not at first. But when I heard her say his name, I stopped moving. No, he doesn't know. He's not the type to snoop. Silence. No, I'm being careful. I'm not stupid. More silence. Then a laugh. I told you. He still thinks I'm at that meeting next Thursday. He's sweet, but predictable. That was the word that broke me. Predictable. I didn't confront her that night. I just walked back upstairs and laid in bed, staring at the ceiling while she whispered promises into someone else's ear. Everything I'd built with her, the house, the business, the dreams, suddenly felt like props. Set pieces for a life I wasn't really part of anymore. I wasn't angry. Not then. I was numb, because I finally understood what people meant when they said the truth has a sound. It's quiet, cold, final. It doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It just settles in. And once it's there, you can't unhear it. I never expected the truth to come from her. Lexi, Brianna's daughter from her first marriage. 16. Sharp as hell. One of those teenagers who saw through people before they saw through themselves. We'd been close for years, since she was 10, maybe earlier. I was Joel at first. Then Dad. Unprompted. Sometime during a trip to the Adirondacks. I remember her saying it casually, like it had always been true. The first time she called me that, I had to walk outside so she wouldn't see me tearing up. I wasn't trying to replace her father. I just wanted to be someone she could count on. Someone solid. She never stopped calling me Dad. Not even after everything. The day it happened, the day she told me, I remember how ordinary it started. I was home alone, fixing the pantry door hinge that kept squeaking no matter how many times I WD-40'd it. Brianna was at a leadership brunch, her third one that month. Lexi had gone to hang out with friends at the mall. I wasn't expecting either of them for hours. But then I heard the front door. Creaked open slowly. Hesitant. I turned the corner and saw her. Standing there, still in her coat, her bag hanging from one shoulder. Her expression stopped me cold. Not angry. Not scared. Something else. Something I'd never seen on her face before. She didn't say hi, didn't take her shoes off, just walked into the living room and sat on the couch like she was preparing for something she didn't want to do. I followed. "Lex," I asked, "everything okay?" She nodded, then shook her head, then shrugged. Her eyes were wide, uncertain. She was chewing the inside of her cheek, a nervous tic she'd had since she was a kid. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Of course. If someone saw something, like, something they weren't supposed to see, something that might hurt someone, should they say it?" I felt my chest tighten. "Depends," I said carefully. "Is the person they'd be telling someone they care about?" She nodded slowly. "Then yes," I said, "especially then." She stared at the floor. "Okay." I waited, and then she told me. She'd been at the mall with her friend, Zoe. They were upstairs in the food court, near the railing that overlooks the fountain on the lower level. They were just messing around, waiting for smoothies. That's when Lexi noticed someone by the fountain. A woman with shoulder-length hair and a pale pink coat, the same one Brianna had worn that morning. At first, she wasn't sure. She even pointed it out to Zoe as a joke. "Doesn't that look like my mom?" Zoe laughed. But then Lexi looked again. Really looked. It wasn't just the coat. It was her. Brianna. And she wasn't alone. She was sitting beside a man. Tall, tan, dark jacket. His arm was resting behind her on the back of the bench. They were laughing, leaning in close. Too close. At one point they were holding hands. And then a kiss. Not a peck. Not a friendly cheek thing. A real kiss. Lexi said she froze. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't blink. She'd never seen her mom like that. Never seen her that open, that gone. She watched for maybe a minute, then turned away and walked to the restroom without saying anything. Zoe followed, asking what was wrong, but Lexi didn't answer. She said her stomach hurt, made an excuse to leave early, took the bus home without texting first, something she never did. "I didn't want to believe it," she said. "I thought maybe it was someone who looked like her, or maybe she was saying goodbye to an old friend. I wanted it to be anything else." Her voice cracked on that last sentence. And that's when I saw the tears. I sat beside her, unsure if I should hug her or stay still. So I stayed still, let her have the space. "I thought about not telling you," she said quietly. "I didn't want to make it worse." "You didn't," I said. "You did the right thing." She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I needed you to know. And I did. Fully. Clearly. No more half-truths. No more benefit of the doubt. No more giving Brianna the space to explain. That evening, after Lexi went to bed, exhausted from whatever strength it had taken to carry that truth home, I drove to the mall. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe proof. Maybe punishment. I parked across from the main entrance and waited. Didn't even know if they'd still be there. But they were. Shane and Brianna, standing outside near the fountain. I didn't have to get close. I just sat in the car and watched. They were side by side, arms barely touching. Her face was lit up in a way I hadn't seen in over a year. She was smiling like she'd discovered something she wasn't ready to share. Shane was saying something. She laughed, then leaned into his side like it was the most natural thing in the world. I raised my phone and took a picture. Not because I needed it for court. Not for leverage. I just needed a record. A receipt that I hadn't imagined all of this. That my gut had been right all along. I drove home in silence. Brianna got back around 10:30, said the brunch had run late. Something about a detour. I didn't respond. Just nodded and asked if she wanted tea. She smiled, said I was being sweet. That night, she fell asleep next to me like nothing was wrong. Like our life wasn't splitting down the middle. And I just laid there, staring at the ceiling. The ring was still gone. And now the silence had big asterisk N. Because what do you do when you finally know? Not think. Not guess. Not suspect. But no. You let it settle. Let it change you. And then, when you're ready, you move. The emotional betrayal was one thing, raw, brutal, personal. But what came next? That hit differently. It wasn't just about love. It wasn't just about Shane. It was about money, about trust, about the business we built together, or at least the one I thought we built together. After Lexi told me what she saw, and I saw it for myself at the mall, I shut down emotionally. Not out of spite, out of necessity. I had to shift, protect what was left. Because even though my marriage was crumbling, I still had the gym. Still had employees, clients, a name in the community. That part of our life had to survive. But the more I tried to lean into that stability, the more I started seeing cracks there too. It started with the books. We co-owned the fitness center, a boutique hybrid between personal training and wellness coaching. We'd launched it 4 years ago, just a couple miles outside Burlington. Small but growing. Brianna handled the administrative and financial side: payroll, vendor management, invoicing. I handled logistics, staffing, maintenance, and client outreach. I trusted her completely. Never once checked a statement unless she needed a second pair of eyes. That was my first mistake. After everything with Shane, I started reviewing our finances, partly to distract myself, partly to see what else might have been hidden. I opened our QuickBooks dashboard and noticed something right away. A $38,000 transfer marked as Q2 Marketing Partnership, Theta Labs. Theta Labs? Never heard of them. I clicked into the invoice. Everything looked legitimate: logos, signatures, itemized services. But the signature? It didn't match the ones we typically used. And the services listed: influencer placements, brand activations, digital lead funneling, were vague at best. I Googled the company. Sparse results. One outdated website. No contact number. No social media presence. No real-world footprint. But the business registry told a different story. Theta Labs LLC. Registered 6 months ago. By Shane R. Caldwell. I felt my stomach drop. $38,000. Gone. Into the pockets of the same man whose hands had been on my wife the night of my brother's wedding. Into a company that, as far as I could tell, existed only on paper. I didn't react, not at first. Just kept clicking. Scanning. Found more. A $6,500 vendor payment to Grindstrong Apparel. Supposedly for branded clothing for trainers. But none of our trainers had received anything new. I asked around discreetly. No one had even heard of it. Another ghost company. A name tied back to the same address Theta Labs was registered to. Shane's apartment. Then came payroll. I pulled the latest reports. Everything looked fine until I saw a recurring entry listed under consulting support, J. Vance. $2,200 every other Friday. Same amount. Same description. We didn't have a J. Vance. Didn't hire anyone new. I searched for the employee file. It existed. Barely. A digital document with nothing but a bank account number, a generic Gmail address, and a signed W-9, signature in Brianna's handwriting. I kept digging. Found purchases for gym equipment we never received, $11,000 to a company in upstate New York that didn't even have a functioning website. Another $4,000 for facility repairs to a contractor who'd never set foot inside our building. I know because I personally handle maintenance. I began compiling the discrepancies into a spreadsheet. Date, amount, description, receiving entity, Brianna's authorization signature. There were patterns. Everything was designed to look clean, all within normal range for a growing gym. Nothing extravagant. But over time, the misdirection added up. $86,000. That's how much I found unaccounted for in the first 3 days of digging. And the more I looked, the more I realized Brianna hadn't just been lying about her feelings, or her body, or her time. She'd been siphoning money, hiding it, and she wasn't doing it alone. Shane wasn't just the guy from the dance floor or the mall bench. He was the architect, the name behind the LLCs, the hidden partner, the one standing behind the curtain while Brianna pulled the strings up front. Couldn't sleep that night. Just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Lexi asleep in the next room. I couldn't bring myself to tell her yet. Not after everything she'd already carried. Around 3 a.m. I opened our home filing cabinet, the one Brianna used for legal paperwork, insurance, and old contracts. Flipped through manila folders until I found what I was looking for. Her power of attorney document. Signed a year ago, back when I had knee surgery and was temporarily off my feet. We'd agreed it made sense, just in case she needed to authorize anything while I was recovering. I never revoked it. She used it to approve at least 5 of the transactions. Signed as me. It was legal. Barely. But it was still fraud in any decent court. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just love lost. This was theft. White collar. Premeditated. And deeply personal. I printed everything I'd found. Invoices, emails, *TS, contracts, bank statements. I filed it in a clean black folder. Labeled it quietly, contingency. I didn't want to go nuclear. Not yet. But I needed the option. Because love can blind you. But paper doesn't lie. The next day, I went into the gym like nothing was wrong. Smiled at the front desk. High-fived our trainer Mark, who was helping a new client through warm-ups. Took inventory of our supplements. Checked the HVAC reports. Brianna came in late. Said traffic was rough. Smiled and kissed me on the cheek. I smiled back. Not because I wanted to, but because you don't give away that you're holding the fuse, not until you're ready to light it. After everything I'd uncovered, the affair, the financial theft, the web of LLCs and ghost vendors, you'd think I would have seen the next setup coming. But I didn't. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just shake your trust in other people. It shakes your trust in yourself. You stop believing your gut, even when it's screaming. It started with a text. Hey stranger, you still in Vermont? It was from a number I didn't recognize. But the signature was familiar. Ashley Reynolds. My college girlfriend. The first woman I ever said, I love you to, and back then, actually meant it with my whole chest. We hadn't spoken in 12, maybe 13 years? She left town after graduation, moved out west, last I heard. We'd ended things on decent terms. No big fight. Just time doing what time does. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Still here. You visiting? Her reply was instant. Just got in yesterday. Family stuff. You got time to catch up? Family stuff. That was the phrase that threw me off. Neutral. Casual. Impossible to question. And after the month I'd had, filled with lies and backchannel moves, something about the simplicity of her tone felt like relief. A blast from a cleaner past. We made plans to meet for coffee. When I told Lexi I was meeting an old friend, she gave me a look. The kind only a teenager who's had to grow up too fast can give. Old friend or old flame? I smirked. Friend. Okay, she said slowly. But don't let her Jedi mind trick you. Girls like that don't come back for no reason. I laughed it off. But her words stayed with me. We met at a little cafe just off Church Street. Ashley looked almost the same, softer around the eyes, maybe more polished, but still had that energy that made everyone else in the room feel like they were running 10 seconds behind her. We hugged, talked about college. She said she was staying with her aunt for a few weeks. Said she was burned out and reevaluating. She asked about my life. I kept it surface level. Said the gym was growing. Left out the part where my wife had gutted it from the inside. She noticed the ring was gone. I shrugged. Complicated. Ashley nodded like she understood. Said she wasn't married either. Dodged a few bullets, she added, laughing into her chai. We stayed for an hour. Then another. Felt easy. Too easy. That's probably why I didn't question when she reached out again 2 days later. Want to get lunch? My treat. I owe you for pretending I didn't cry during junior year finals. I said yes. And that's how it started. For the next week, we kept bumping into each other. Randomly running into her at the co-op. A chance meeting at the gym. She claimed she'd looked it up and figured she'd drop in for a class. We grabbed dinner once. Then again. Always her suggesting, me accepting. I didn't think much of it. I told myself it was harmless. Friendly. Familiar. But in hindsight, it was a pattern. And patterns don't form by accident. One night, about 2 weeks after that first coffee, Ashley came by the gym again. Said she was in the area. I was closing up late. just me and the echo of barbells. We talked for a while in the office. She brought takeout. She even offered to help me reorganize some old invoices. That's when I noticed it. She reached for the drawer I usually kept locked. The one with our more sensitive files, vendor contracts, tax documents, past due notices from the Brianna mess. I stopped her without even thinking. Wrong one, I said quickly. She smiled. Oops. Sorry. Habit. I used to organize your desk. Remember? She said it like a joke. I didn't laugh. After she left, something sat wrong with me. It wasn't just the drawer. It was everything. The timing. The ease. The way she'd appeared right when things were falling apart. That night, I did what I should have done 2 weeks earlier. I ran her name. Started with social media. Her profiles were clean. Too clean. Barely active. Generic posts. A couple of photos from 5 years ago, one from a hiking trip with friends, people I didn't recognize. Nothing recent. Then I checked public records. Nothing obvious. But one hit caught my eye. A business registry listing. Ashley Reynolds, registered agent for a consulting group out of Chicago. Nexus Expansion Group. Filed just 3 months ago. Out of curiosity, I searched the business name through the Vermont Secretary of State's database. And there it was. An application to conduct business in the state. Filed last month. With one familiar email address listed under the Affiliate Advisor section. Shane Caldwell at Theta Labs. Co. My blood went cold. I dug deeper. Ashley's name was listed as an advisor on a project labeled Rural Capital Reallocation Plan. Basically a program to pitch business owners on equity transformation through collateral repositioning. Buzzwords. But the file, which had somehow been submitted as part of a local grant application, mentioned me by name. And the gym. They were planning to approach me about a proposal to restructure underutilized commercial assets into liquid capital, with the recommendation to use the family ranch, my late father's land, as potential collateral. I nearly punched my desk. The ranch wasn't just land. It was sacred. My family's home for 3 generations. My dad worked himself into the ground trying to keep that place out of corporate hands. I'd put it into my name after he passed, promising myself I'd never touch it for business. And now, here was Ashley, sitting across from me just yesterday, trying to position herself as someone who cared, who wanted to reconnect, while planning to rope me into a scam to mortgage the only thing I had left that hadn't been violated. They hadn't finished the play yet, but it was clear Ashley was the setup. Not just a distraction. A wee *P***N. Brianna hadn't gotten everything she wanted from me. Shane hadn't either. So they sent someone I wouldn't question. Someone with a good story. A familiar face. But they underestimated one thing. I wasn't the same person anymore. The next day, I asked Ashley to meet at the same cafe where we first reconnected. She smiled when she saw me. Sat down like nothing was wrong. I've been thinking, I said casually, about what you said the other night about new ventures, partnerships, getting a fresh start. Her eyes lit up. Yeah? I slid a folder across the table. Maybe you should read this first. Inside were printouts of every filing I'd found. Her business registry, the shared contact with Shane, the proposal that included my ranch. She opened it, flipped through. First, she tried to keep her face blank. Then she laughed. You've been busy. I didn't smile. You're going to tell him I said no. You're going to walk away. And if you so much as contact me, Lexi, or anyone from my team again, I will bury both of you in legal filings. Joel. No. We're done. She started to say something else, but I stood up and left. Didn't look back. That night, I sent all the documents, including Ashley's involvement, to my attorney. No more waiting. No more mercy. They wanted everything I had left. And now I was ready to fight back.